Away we go. Good evening there. Justin, I hope you're out there. Bryan called me round and said I had to come around and make a video for you. And being the sort of domineering and charming guy he really is, I really had no option. He might have come around and beaten up the chickens or something, you know.
No, it's a wonderful time when I had a visit from Nick, because we seem to get on quite well. And we have similar outlooks on life, Justin. So, yeah, we're going to talk primarily, I think, about surviving in the post-peak oil and post-financial crisis economic climate or environment. Yeah,
yeah. Look, what we're actually talking about here is something which has been ongoing for quite a while, and that's that people are feeling displaced from their whole sort of surroundings, the whole expectations, and this is what it really hinges around, the conditioning they've had all their life. And the first thing we'd like to talk about is, rather than actually talk about I can go out there and grow a few vegetables and get a few eggs off the chickens and, you know, maybe moke Granny as she goes round the corner and steal a penny or two. What you really need to be thinking about is your own state of mind. Because what happens to people who become unemployed or become marginalised in a society is they start questioning themselves, and they've been conditioned to actually accept the blame for this. And it is a blame thing in their minds, and this is the first thing which we need to actually get some focus around, which is that, you know, it is not, never has been and never will be about you. And therein is sort of it's a double-edged sword, because people do take the blame, but the reality is it's not them to blame. But at the same time, in that whole thing, the corollary to blame is, you know, the upside of it, which is you're part of a bigger group. So the first thing I like to say is, you know, if you're looking at this environment, you're not alone. It wasn't you. And if you're looking for strength, don't just look for it inside yourself, look for it inside of the group. And, you know, that's the hard bit. Who are the group? I mean, have you got thoughts on that, Bryan?
No, I haven't got faults on it at all. Actually, just excuse me a minute, because I just want to check what I've done with my home studio camera. And I could totally agree with you, Nick. Look, I said to Justin a while back that you can't do it by yourself. So he's done his very best. He's got some land. I think he's got some stock. But, you know, there are still those fundamental overheads that you can't get rid of. You know, you've got, oh, good heavens, there'll be your local tax, your electricity bills. I think Justin might be clever enough to figure out how to create electricity, and there's gas, and maybe he's got a wood-burning oven or something like that. It's really hard to try and live in the context of post-peak oil, because really, you know, we're only just theorising. We haven't really got a clue about how we can imagine how bad it could get.
Yeah, I'm sort of more inclined to believe that, you know, the first step for any person who's facing this, even if they're reasonably secure in today's environment, is to be able to envisage an environment which isn't the same as today, but then to say, take a reaction to it. And most people, I mean, you see them all across America, nutcases who are bordering up and laying in the ammunition and doing all this stuff, and they're survivalists, and they haven't actually asked what's going to happen when the ammo runs out and the bear comes around. And, you know, that's not really how it's done. When the bear comes around, it helps to be there about, you know, a couple of dozen of you with clubs to get rid of the thing.
Well,
you know.
I think you need more than clubs to do a bearing. And I was hearing a story about how a couple went camping somewhere out in the woods, and the woman's husband had gone for a while, and she went off looking for him, and she came through a clearing, and there was the bear eating his leg. You know, he'd actually dismembered him. And, you know, look, the thing is that you can scare yourself with all the scenarios.
Yes.
The problem, as far as I'm concerned, is that, to be honest with you, Nick, I think the first thing that would happen is there would be an absolute breakdown of society, be utter chaos. I mean, first of all, you have, say, for example, you have some kind of crisis whereby everything stops. So that means that people can't get fuel. So there's 3 days in the supermarkets of stock, okay? Yeah. So, I mean, we're not stupid people. We'll get together, we'll go down there and we'll hop into the supermarket and grab what we can, because that's just what happens when you get desperate. Well, I mean, you'd hang around your house for a couple of days, or maybe you wouldn't. I'm just not sure how people behave.
Yeah, you see, I don't see this as an apocalyptic thing, Brian, in this respect, and I can see these events happening. I'm more sort of worried about how people are going to face a gradual erosion of the conditions, and then some people will actually face that erosion a lot quicker because they lose their means of livelihood. They lose their jobs. They're thrown out onto the street. While other people around seem very much more insulated from it. The reality is, eventually, even those who are insulated will be caught up with.
No, well,
but it's that transition period,
yeah.
And it's how people actually face that thing psychologically. And I think what I'm suggesting is the primary thing is to have community. If you don't have community now, make community, make friends, make contacts.
Yeah, I guess look, I'm going quick to the far end of the scenario, and that is, if it gets really bad, everybody is in it. And it's just a question of what kinds of social arrangements are reached in order to cope with, this incredibly extreme situation that you find yourself in. I mean, the whole stuff about, at the moment, a lot of people are losing jobs.
Correct.
And another thing that's happening is that children of the privileged class are actually having trouble getting work. Now, that's the tipping point. When that actually happens, you've got people who have potential to be mobile, upwardly mobile, psychologically mobile, moving to resolve these issues. And, it's... When push comes to shove,
that's the whole thing, though. The paradigm is, you use the words upwardly mobile. And what we have is a stasis where there's no one going to be upwardly mobile unless they're extremely fortunate. And the vast majority of us are all going to be, in that terms, downwardly mobile. How should we react? Because if we see ourselves as better than the next person, or aspiring to be better than the next person, the moment we're not, we're very vulnerable. We should be aspiring to move sidewardly as mobile. We should actually be being people with community, people with friends, people with arrangements.
Yeah.
We need to do that now, not later.
Have we got the ability to actually make those kinds of arrangements that... I mean, this is a... Look, we're back again to an example that I put on Facebook this morning. A guy's talking about the problem of population and overshooting your carrying capacity. So he gives the example, we've got 5 acres and we have 10 deer on the 5 acres. And whatever the balance is that's necessary to have steady state. The deer are being provided for, but when you put, say, 50 deer onto that 5 acres, then the whole ball game changes, okay?
Correct.
And so what we have is, in many places around the world, we've got huge numbers of people with no idea how you're going to provide for those people.
Yeah.
When suddenly the plug is pulled on the energy bank, the plug is pulled on the financial institutions.
Yeah.
You haven't got people moving food around, and you haven't got a hope
And
help.
that's why I always, as I said before, you haven't got a hope in hell if you stick within the current paradigm, because it's broken. It's not reparable. You actually have to build a new paradigm, and part of that new paradigm is having the people, because the whole thing is about people. No one's an island, they'll work away. You need to be able to have those arrangements to work together, and Bryan's guy's got 5 deer on his scrubby acres there, but it won't grow a piece of barley. But the guy down the road can grow too much barley, but it's no good in terms of land for deer. But if he feeds some of that barley through to Bryan to give to his deer, he can get a deer back. It's that kind of arrangement, actually understanding the new networks, the new paradigms, the new way of sharing things out. We've got to get there, and the problem we have, is, as Bryan pointed out, is that if we hit the wall now, we won't get there quickly enough.
No, well, you see, the thing is that with overshooting your carrying capacity, what you have is die-off. A huge number of people die off. See, it's a really fundamental sort of issue that I don't think anybody's actually spent much time trying to figure out. But the first thing is, you have a group of people in a given society. The most fundamental thing that has to be developed is trust. So, for example, I happen to own my house, but if I stop paying the rates on this property, as long as there's a local authority there working, sending me bills, it's going to be a problem.
Correct.
And so, I have to be able to go to people in the community and say, hey, look, when it all falls apart, are we going to hold together? For example, if the local authority comes to try and exercise some oppressive power over me in order to extract what I haven't got, or take my house off me, how is all that going to stop? And at what stage, are the police going to say, look, we're no different to anybody else, we're being threatened as well? Well, there's authority structure, where do you fit into it? How intact does it remain? There'll always be somebody who's prepared.
I believe it'll be slightly different than that, because the authority structure, when it actually demands something which can't be delivered, and it demands that delivery for people who don't deserve the delivery, or an entity which doesn't do anything to actually enable or deserve that delivery, will lose its legitimacy. And Bryan's quite right to talk about trust, because we trust them at the moment to sort of treat us right, but the moment they don't treat us right, well, we won't trust them, so they won't be getting paid, they'll be getting hung.
That's gone forward a bit, that's the extreme. But you see,
you see where I'm at, though.
I can see where you're at, but what happens is that groups don't stick together, individuals are easily picked off. So,
correct.
Basically what happens
you
is...
need enough pain.
No, well, you see, we all have to be feeling it basically at the same time. And coordinating a reasoned response. People are at different levels and different understandings, and there's a kind of weasel-like nature.
It's delivery, though, Bryan. If you can't deliver what you're demanding the dues for, and you can't actually pay your people who are supposed to deliver that, they walk away as well. The whole thing sort of hollows out. It becomes very anarchic. Well, not anarchic, anarchic's much better than that. It collapses from the inside. Don't you think?
Well, it's sort of almost assuming that there's some kind of hidden hand that's going to help guide all this.
A really good thing happens in every revolution. The cops don't get paid.
Yeah, but...
The moment the cops don't get paid, the revolution happens.
The revolution's never like what it's written about in the textbooks, or, the dominant power...
but you know what, that is a commonality.
Somehow the dominant power gets control of all the professors of history. Actually, what happens is that the whole of the system is coloured by the political dominance of the time, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
finding out exactly what really happens. It's just like war. We've had so much told to us, scripted,
Yeah.
about what happened in war situations, but the reality was, so different to what we've been given through, good heavens, the media, through the film industry and so forth. And so, I mean, just trying to get your head around what all this means, and listening to all the commentators, Nick, I got a feeling that it would get really, really messy.
It will. I'm just not so sure whether it will take, so where we might diverge a bit, Brian, is whether the messiness is very fast, or whether we have a slow erosion and then fall over a precipice, or whether we just have a straight slow erosion.
I think because of the wide sort of city, or the fact that we're globally hooked into a electronic internet, what's the word I'm looking for?
A linked-in global community.
Yeah, I think that the consequences of that would be, I think, very rapid change.
But and let's just play it backwards in that case. Let's just do the whole thing in reverse. I didn't know about internet when I was a kid. In fact, I had a battery-powered transistor radio, and I used to read with a torch in bed, and a torch was a wonderful thing. It meant I could read till midnight without parents telling me off. And their parents didn't have an electric light, and things were local. So what we've done is we've played very fast forward to actually become this interwebbed, interlinked global society with the global money, etc. It's got very big, very fast, and I would posit that it could actually do the same in reverse very quickly.
Yeah.
And so what do you go back to? Well, the obvious thing is to look to where you were and go back to that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, I don't know about...
It's actually going back. It's people releasing where they're at and understanding that that's inevitable, because we've been sold and we sell ourselves this concept of progress, which is the biggest load of nonsense I've ever heard. There is no progress. It's merely a continuum. We just change how we do it.
Yeah. Progress is a word that's used by the boosters and the promoters.
Yeah.
And, it's... If you just look at, say, for example, some of those early westerns, you've got the bringing the new steam train across the country and its progress and all the rest of it. I mean, everything is just...
It's another gadget, isn't it?
It's it's another gadget, but it's window dressing for the boosters and the promoters, and this stuff is popular culture and it's deeply shallow.
Yeah.
But what I want to know about, Nick, is in the when the lid comes off and everything goes to the dogs, who's going to fix my teeth? Because I'm at an age where I need to see a dentist. I might have pharmaceutical requirements. Where
will have pharmaceutical requirements.
Where is it going to come from? And so, we talk about a collapse in society, but I have to tell you that if that's the case, all of these services, they all
go west.
They're threatened. And at the same time, you and I get threatened as a consequence of not being able to have access to all of this stuff that keeps us going. So, my dear friend in London, Dave Wetzel, he says, well, he'd be quite happy to jump off now, okay, to make room for somebody else. But all I got to say is that people do have this incredible drive to be self-protecting, don't they?
They do.
I mean, even all the bold statements in the world about, and the rhetorical the rhetoric that we utter from time to time, when push comes to shove, people can be pretty tenacious at,
And that's the bit I was waiting for you to say, Brian, because the tenacity which you're looking at is in terms of your own skill set and your own knowledge. For example, if you're a dentist, there are basic things you don't need technology for because you know how dentistry works. Now, whether you can get the equipment or the tools or whatever, you have a basic ability to perform some degree of dentistry. That in a world where dentistry is no longer eminently possible is still a tradable commodity, whereas someone else might have a basic ability to fix a widget which is broken, which you don't. You got to trade. But that trade is a trust system. That's what you were talking about before.
Absolutely.
It's not a money system, it's a trust system.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is, rather than trading a debt, you're pushing forward a future trust.
Yeah.
And this is a total new way of thinking about how you exchange things.
It actually demands so much of us that I actually have a problem, Nick. I have a problem accepting that. I have a problem accepting that we're capable of giving that kind of commitment. And I'll tell you, I really like to be able to reach into my pocket and say, hey, today I went to the dentist. He had all those wonderful German products, chemists, plastics, polymers and all the rest of it, that they put in your teeth, all oil-based of course, that keep your chompers going.
Yeah.
And they know how to do all that stuff, and I just simply say to him, look, you give me your bill, I pay, we say goodbye to each other. Now, I don't know how, that's going to work when you end up saying, well, I've got this and I can trade that and so forth. And it gets messy.
That's what money was about, basically, was actually enabling you to take these debts, which everyone had obligations and debts. We put them in coins or on notes, and we made them freely transferable for an ever increasing number of services and products. When we've got an ever decreasing amount of products, services, etc., we come down to necessities, and we're actually starting to have to trust one another to deliver. But the delivery may not be into some stage in the future. And that's how we've got to come up with some way of actually managing this and working it. It is not easy, but we're going to have to do it.
The most fundamental, sort of component to a community, or the basics, is family. And if I can use the example, at the beginning of time, we'll say, for example, if we use some of the biblical analogies, what does Cain do? He kills his brother. Okay, so there's no trust there in the family unit. And I've got to just say that, taking the personality out of it, you're doing these transactions, you've got something you can give somebody. I don't want to hang around and see whether the quality's reached a standard of performance, or whether I'm going to be, whether I can come up to scratch and all. It's so messy.
Well, let's just stop that a second, Bryan. Let's just take that word transaction. That's got an implication of dosh. It's got an implication of money. It hasn't got an implication of an actual, a zero balance swap of social good between two disparate entities for mutual benefit.
So you're going to come around here and say you've got something that I need or I might like, and I'm saying to you, listen, I can fix your bicycle for you. So will you do something that I need? Well, it could be.
Well, maybe we don't actually keep a tally of it. The guy's a dentist, people turn up. His expectation is people will turn up with a cabbage and a piece of pork for him. It's as simple as that. The community looks after all.
He may actually, the dentist may have to change the way he does your teeth. For example, a piece of pork and a cabbage.
Might have to make the fillings out of pork bone.
Yes. And this is all I just say, Nick. We haven't got a clue what we're up against when you have a society disintegrating. And I suspect,
everyone's going to say, we haven't got a clue. I mean, everyone's going to say what I've just suggested is not possible.
90%.
But I'm actually going to throw that back in everyone's face, and I'm going to say, how do you think medieval life and monastic life was funded? Because no one had a coin. Coins were merely used to actually provide some way of balancing the ledgers of people who could actually afford stuff or needed to. But 99% of the people never saw a coin in their bloody life, and yet they lived and they got things and they traded stuff and they worked as a community. So we've got to actually look at it from that aspect.
The problem
can be done.
It was actually a brutal, a very brutal social and cultural experience.
Correct. And
in medieval life. And I mean, the thing is that this has never been a golden age. Let's get it straight. And what we're talking about, there'll be a real deficit in the golden age in this future that we're moving into. Post peak oil, post I've
never denied that we live in a gilded existence, and I'm not so cynical as yourself that prior times have been as brutal, but they certainly haven't been as edged as your cushions you're sitting on over there, etc. They certainly haven't been as good.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up because I can see that actually we intended to be able to chart the future, and what we realise is it's going to be bloody difficult, guys.
Yeah, we're very divergent.
We're going to give it to you as frank and as honest as we can, and that's it. We'll see you next time.
Hey, really nice. If you're out there, Justin, great to trade a few words.